An entitled HOA committee turned my front yard into their personal parking lot while I was away on a business trip, then had the audacity to charge me permit fees for their cars on my property. But don't worry, their scheme completely backfired. In the most satisfying way. Let's dive into how this outrageous situation unfolded. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm a 35-year-old software developer who bought my dream house last year. It's a beautiful 2-story colonial with a sprawling front yard that I spent a fortune landscaping. The previous owner had installed an intricate irrigation system and planted rare Japanese maple trees that I've carefully maintained. The property sits right next to Pine Grove Estates, one of those super strict HOAs where they measure your grass with rulers. But here's the important part. My property is completely independent and not part of their association. Everything was peaceful until last month when I had to travel to Singapore for a 2-week business trip. I notified my immediate neighbors that I'd be gone and asked them to keep an eye on my place. What I didn't expect was to receive frantic texts from my elderly neighbor Martha with photos showing my entire front yard transformed into a makeshift parking lot. Apparently, Pine Grove Estates was hosting some massive charity gala at their clubhouse, and their new HOA board, led by a woman named Victoria Thompson, decided my yard would make the perfect overflow parking. Without any permission, they laid down gravel paths, put up temporary parking spot markers, and even installed those plastic chain barriers around my prized maple trees. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. When I landed back home, I found an envelope stuffed with parking permits and a bill for $2,750 in administrative fees for facilitating community parking solutions. They actually expected me to pay them for using my property without permission. The note attached said failure to pay would result in liens being placed on my property and mentioned something about mandatory community participation clauses. It was complete nonsense, since I'm not even part of their HOA, but Victoria's signature at the bottom, with her gold-embossed Executive Director of Community Affairs title, showed just how serious they were about this ridiculous scheme. Well, they clearly picked the wrong homeowner to mess with. I documented everything, called my lawyer, and set in motion a plan that would teach them an unforgettable lesson about property rights. Trust me, you're going to love how this ends, especially the part where Victoria tried climbing onto a tow truck to save her Mercedes from being impounded. Let me know in the comments if you've ever dealt with HOA overreach like this. But first, grab some popcorn, because this story of entitled HOA Karma is about to get wild. And yes, I have all the security footage to prove every single detail of what I'm about to tell you. To give you more clarity about my property and why this situation was so outrageous, let me explain my setup. I purchased this house after spending 3 years saving up and researching neighborhoods. The main selling point was the half-acre lot with mature landscaping and that coveted not in an HOA status. The previous owner was a retired botanist who transformed the yard into something spectacular. Picture this. A circular driveway made of premium cobblestone pavers leads to a 3-car garage. The front yard features 3 30-year-old Japanese maple trees, each worth over $15,000, positioned around a custom-designed meditation garden. There's also a koi pond with a small waterfall surrounded by rare imported plants that bloom year-round. I've maintained detailed records of every plant's value and care requirements. Plus, I've spent another $50,000 on additional landscaping improvements since moving in. What makes my property unique is its location. While technically adjacent to Pine Grove Estates, my lot sits on a slight elevation, making it visible from their clubhouse. The previous owner had specifically petitioned the city to have the property lines redrawn before Pine Grove Estates was developed, ensuring it would remain independent I have all the documentation proving this, including surveys and legal papers. Victoria Thompson, the new HOA executive director, had actually tried to convince me to join their association when she first took office 6 months ago. She showed up at my door with a gift basket and a 20-page contract talking about community unity and property value protection. I politely declined, explaining that I preferred maintaining my independence. She seemed to accept this at first, but would occasionally make comments about how my estate-style landscaping made their clubhouse look less prestigious in comparison. What I didn't know then was that Victoria had been planning their annual Evening of Excellence charity gala, Pine Grove's biggest social event of the year. They typically host 200-plus guests, including local politicians and business leaders. The event had outgrown their clubhouse parking capacity years ago, but they'd always arranged for shuttle services from a nearby shopping centre. This year, however, Victoria had gotten into a dispute with the shopping centre's management over some unauthorised HOA signs she'd posted there. They refused to allow parking for the gala, leaving her scrambling for alternatives. That's when she started eyeing my property. I later learned from Martha, my elderly neighbour, that Victoria had held several emergency board meetings in the weeks before my business trip. She'd apparently convinced the board that my property was technically under their jurisdiction due to some obscure clause about community-adjacent properties in their bylaws. She'd even hired a local contractor to assess my yard for temporary parking conversion without my knowledge. The most infuriating part, they'd been watching my social media to track my business trip. I had posted about my upcoming Singapore presentation on LinkedIn, which Victoria's assistant had monitored. They deliberately waited until I was literally on the other side of the world before executing their plan. Martha tried to stop them when she saw the contractors arriving, but Victoria showed her a fake property authorization form with what appeared to be my signature on it. When Martha threatened to call me, Victoria assured her it was all pre-approved and that the HOA would restore everything to its original condition. Within 48 hours, they had transformed my meticulously maintained yard into a gravel parking lot. They laid down heavy-duty plastic mats, poured gravel over them, and installed those temporary parking spot markers you see at construction sites. They even put up a sign that read, "Pine Grove Estates Premium Valet Parking," right next to my mailbox. The more I learned about what happened during my absence, the more my blood boiled. But Victoria's scheme was about to unravel in spectacular fashion, and her Evening of Excellence would become infamous for all the wrong reasons. Let me detail the incredible lengths they went to transform my property without permission. When I say they went all out, I mean they operated like a professional parking management company, except it was all completely illegal. During my absence, Victoria had mobilized an entire landscaping crew. According to my security cameras, they arrived at 5 a.m. the day after I left, in trucks bearing the Pine Grove Estates maintenance logos. The crew didn't just lay down some gravel, they installed a sophisticated temporary parking system that would make airport lots jealous. First, they covered my entire front lawn with industrial-grade protective mats, the kind used at construction sites. These alone cost thousands of dollars. Then they strategically positioned solar-powered LED parking lights around the perimeter. They even installed a mobile payment kiosk near my mailbox. Yes, they planned to charge people to park on my property. The most devastating part was how they handled my prized gardens. Instead of working around them, they literally boxed in my Japanese maples with wooden platforms, creating elevated walkways between parking spaces. My koi pond? They covered it with a large decorative tent, claiming it was a welcome station for valet service, the rare peonies and orchids I'd imported from Japan. either trampled or removed entirely to make way for their parking spots. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But here's where their planning got really elaborate. They created a detailed parking map, complete with numbered spaces and QR codes for their digital payment system. Each parking space was marked with high-end removable paint, the kind used for professional sporting events. They divided my yard into 3 zones: premium valet, self-park priority, and general admission. The paperwork they left behind, which I later obtained through my lawyer, revealed their entire pricing structure. Premium valet, closest to their clubhouse, $50 per vehicle. Self-park priority, $35 per vehicle. General admission, $25 per vehicle. They estimated fitting 75-80 cars on my property during the gala. Simple math showed they were planning to rake in thousands of dollars using my land as their private parking lot. The administrative fees they tried charging me were actually a small percentage of what they expected to earn. Victoria had even hired professional valets and security guards to manage the operation. These poor guys had no idea they were part of an illegal scheme. They'd been told this was all properly authorized and that I was a community partner who'd agreed to help with the charity gala. The most shocking discovery came from my security system's cloud backup. While the visible cameras had been covered or turned away, my hidden backup system caught Victoria herself, supervising the installation of a sophisticated drainage system to prevent any water damage claims. They actually dug channels in my yard and installed temporary French drains, all without permits or permission. My smart home system's activity log showed multiple attempts to access my garage door opener during this time. Someone had tried using a universal remote to get into my garage, presumably to create even more parking space. Thankfully, my system uses encrypted signals and logged every attempt. The cherry on top, they'd printed official-looking Pine Grove Estates extended parking permits with my property's address on them. These permits included terms and conditions that claimed I had voluntarily entered into a community parking agreement. They'd even forged my signature on the sample permits, though it looked nothing like my actual signature. All this planning, all these resources, just to steal my property for their event. The level of premeditation was staggering, but as thorough as their planning was, they made one crucial mistake. They documented everything. Every permit, every receipt, every email about their parking expansion project would soon become evidence. In what was about to become a legendary legal battle. The initial conflict erupted the moment I stepped off my return flight from Singapore. While still in the airport terminal, my phone exploded with text messages from neighbors and photos, showing my yard's transformation. But what really set everything in motion was the incredibly condescending welcome letter Victoria had left for me. Let me read you this masterpiece of entitlement. Dear valued community member, on behalf of Pine Grove Estates, we're delighted to inform you that your property has been selected for our Community Parking Enhancement Initiative. As part of our ongoing efforts to improve neighborhood cohesion, your front yard has been professionally converted into a premium parking facility for our annual Excellence Gala. This honor comes with significant benefits. The letter went on to list these so-called benefits: priority consideration for future HOA membership, recognition at our annual Community Awards ceremony, complimentary ticket to next year's gala, value $250, your name on our community partners plaque. But then came the real kicker, a detailed breakdown of fees I supposedly owed them. Initial parking zone setup fee, $750. Community integration assessment, $500. Environmental impact study, $400. Parking permit processing, 300s. Administrative overhead, 500 total due, 2,450, payable within 15 days to avoid additional community non-compliance penalties. I immediately called my lawyer from the airport, and she was as shocked as I was. She advised me to document everything before they could alter any evidence. So instead of going straight home, I made a quick stop at a hardware store to buy additional security cameras. When I finally pulled up to my house, I found Victoria herself supervising a team setting up additional lighting for the upcoming gala. She spotted me and came marching over with this incredibly fake smile plastered on her face. "Oh, wonderful, you're back," she exclaimed, acting as if this was all completely normal. "I was just about to call you. We've made some exciting improvements to your property. Did you get our welcome packet?" I remained calm but firm. "Victoria, what you've done is illegal. Remove everything and restore my property immediately." Her smile didn't waver, but her voice took on a patronizing tone. Now, let's not be difficult. This is for the greater good of our community. Do you know how many charitable organizations will benefit from our gala? Your yard was just sitting here empty, and we've improved it. The parking fees alone will generate substantial donations. My yard wasn't just sitting here empty. It was my professionally landscaped private property, I replied, and those Japanese maples you've boxed in, they're worth more than your annual HOA budget. That's when her facade cracked slightly. Those trees, please, they're blocking the view of our clubhouse. If anything, we're doing you a favor by incorporating your property into our community standards. Now, about those administrative fees. I cut her off. I'm not paying you a cent. In fact, you'll be paying to restore everything you've damaged. I want all of this removed within 24 hours. Victoria's expression turned cold. I don't think you understand how things work around here. The Pine Grove Estates Board has already approved this project. Your property may not be officially part of our HOA, but we have ways of ensuring community cooperation. It would be shame if the city received anonymous complaints about code violations on your property. As she turned to walk away, she called over her shoulder, "The gala is in 3 days. I suggest you cash in on those community benefits while you can. The fees only go up from here." Little did Victoria know, but my security cameras had captured every word of this conversation. Her threat about anonymous complaints was exactly the kind of evidence my lawyer had advised me to collect. But Victoria's intimidation attempt was about to backfire spectacularly, because I had already set in motion a plan that would make her precious gala memorable for all the wrong reasons. After that initial confrontation with Victoria, things escalated quickly into a series of increasingly hostile exchanges. The very next morning, I woke up to find a small army of workers setting up even more parking infrastructure on my property. They were installing permanent-looking signposts and painting lines directly onto the gravel they'd laid down. I immediately went outside to confront the crew supervisor, a burly guy named Mike, who seemed genuinely confused by my objections. "Ma'am, I've got signed permits right here," he said, pulling out a stack of official-looking documents. "These are authorized by Pine Grove Estates Executive Committee and the City Planning Department." Upon closer inspection, I noticed something fishy. The city permit had obvious inconsistencies. The signature was dated for a Sunday when government offices are closed, and the permit number format didn't match standard city codes. I'd done enough home improvements to recognize a fake permit when I saw one. I called the city planning department on the spot, putting it on speakerphone. The clerk confirmed what I suspected. No permits had been issued for my address. Mike's face fell as he listened to the conversation. "Look," he said after I hung up, "I don't want any trouble. We were just following orders from Ms. Thompson." Right on cue, Victoria came speed-walking across my yard, designer heels sinking into the gravel with each step. "Is there a problem here?" she demanded, clutching her tablet like a shield. "Why aren't the premium parking spots being marked?" I held up my phone, still displaying the call log from the city. Want to explain these fake permits, Victoria, because the city has no record of approving any of this work. For a split second, her composure cracked, but she recovered quickly, turning to address the work crew instead of me. "Continue with the installation," she ordered. "We have all the necessary approvals from the Pine Grove Estates Board." The Pine Grove Estates Board has zero authority over my property, I countered. "Pack up and leave now, or I'm calling the police to report vandalism and fraud." Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Listen here, you're making a serious mistake. Do you have any idea who sits on our board? Judge Harrison, Commissioner Blake. One phone call from me, and your little property tax reassessment could become very complicated. Not to mention those questionable home-based business permits for your software consulting." I was stunned. She'd actually researched my personal information to use as leverage. "Are you threatening me with tax fraud and permit violations?" "Threatening?" She laughed, but her eyes were cold. "I'm offering you an opportunity to be part of something bigger than your selfish little garden paradise. The gala guest list includes every major investor and developer in the county. Your cooperation now could open doors you can't imagine." "Or," I prompted, "or we can make your life very difficult. Trees fall during storms all the time. Irrigation systems mysteriously malfunction. Anonymous complaints pile up at City Hall. Is this really the hill you want to die on?" I pulled out my phone again and stopped the recording app. Victoria's face went pale as she realized her threats had been captured. "Yes," I replied calmly. "This is exactly the hill I'm willing to die on. Now get your workers and your equipment off my property before I add blackmail to the growing list of charges." She stormed off, but not before turning back to shout, "The gala starts at 6 p.m. sharp on Saturday. I suggest you don't do anything foolish to interfere. The consequences would be unfortunate." As I watched her retreat, I couldn't help but smile. Victoria thought she was dealing with some pushover tech nerd who would crumble under pressure. She had no idea that I'd spent the entire morning laying the groundwork for a counterattack that would make her precious gala one for the record books. The next 48 hours would teach her an expensive lesson about messing with other people's property. Victoria's first retaliatory strike came swiftly and was obviously designed to intimidate me into submission. By that afternoon, an orchestrated whisper campaign had spread throughout Pine Grove Estates, painting me as some sort of community-hating villain who was trying to sabotage their charitable endeavors. I discovered this when my one friendly neighbor in Pine Grove, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Chen, came over to warn me. "They're spreading some nasty rumors about you at the community center," he said, clearly uncomfortable. "Victoria called an emergency resident meeting this morning. She told everyone you're trying to shut down their children's hospital fundraising efforts." According to Mr. Chen, Victoria had put on quite a performance. She'd brought in photos of sick children who would supposedly be affected by my selfishness. She'd even created a PowerPoint presentation showing how my property was historically part of Pine Grove Estates, complete with doctored surveys and property records. But the most manipulative part was how she'd framed the narrative. She told everyone that I had initially agreed to help with parking, another complete lie, but had suddenly withdrawn my support after accepting community improvements to my property. She claimed I was now trying to exploit the situation by demanding excessive restoration fees. The smear campaign spread like wildfire. Within hours, my social media was flooded with messages from Pine Grove residents I'd never met. "How dare you try to ruin our charity gala? Your greed is hurting sick children. This is why we need stronger HOA controls on adjacent properties." Victoria had cleverly positioned herself as the defender of community values while painting me as a heartless troublemaker. She'd even started a hashtag Pine Grove parking, where residents shared photos of my unused yard space from before their unauthorized modifications. But her masterstroke was leveraging her connections with local media. A freelance reporter from the community newspaper, who just happened to be Victoria's cousin, published a piece titled "Local Homeowner Threatens to Derail Children's Hospital Fundraiser Over Parking Dispute." The article was a masterpiece of biased reporting. It described me as a confrontational tech industry transplant who was refusing to cooperate with community improvement efforts. They even dug up and misrepresented an old parking ticket I'd received years ago to paint me as having a history of parking-related incidents. By evening, pamphlets had appeared on every door in the neighborhood. They detailed the supposed community benefits of their parking scheme and included a carefully edited version of my confrontation with Victoria, making it seem like I'd been the aggressive one. The pamphlet ended with a call to action, urging residents to stand united against destructive individual interests. The pressure was intense. Even local businesses started getting involved. The coffee shop I frequented suddenly couldn't find my mobile orders. The dry cleaner lost my favorite suit. The local grocery store clerk asked if I was that person causing trouble for the children's hospital. Victoria had orchestrated a perfect storm of social pressure, cleverly mixing truth with lies to create a narrative that made me look like the villain. She was betting that the community pressure would force me to back down, rather than be branded as the person who ruined a charity event. What she didn't count on was that I'd dealt with much worse pressure during my years in tech startups. I'd learned long ago that sometimes being right means being unpopular. Plus, I had something she didn't know about yet. Concrete evidence of every single lie she'd told. As I watched the community turn against me, I couldn't help but think how this would make her eventual downfall even more satisfying. Victoria was so focused on winning the PR battle that she'd left herself exposed to a much more devastating counterattack. While she was busy spreading rumors, I'd been quietly gathering evidence and setting up the dominoes that would soon fall in spectacular fashion. The escalation through formal channels began when I discovered a stack of official-looking notices zip-tied to my front door. Each one was more outrageous than the last, printed on Pine Grove Estate's letterhead, with Victoria's signature prominently displayed at the bottom. The first notice was titled "Urgent Property Use Violation Assessment" and listed a series of completely fabricated infractions: unauthorized landscape modification, prevention, $750 fine; community access obstruction, $500 fine; non-compliance with emergency parking provisions, $1,000 fine; failure to submit to community infrastructure; integration, $1,500 fine; historical property boundary dispute resolution fee, $2,000 fine. Total alleged fines, $5,650, due within 48 hours to prevent further enforcement actions. The second notice was even more absurd: a community integration mandate that claimed my property was subject to something called the Pine Grove Estate's Extended Jurisdiction Clause. They'd actually created a fake legal document, complete with bogus municipal codes and references to non-existent local ordinances. But the third notice really took the cake. It was a preliminary lien notification that threatened to place a lien on my property for willful and continued disruption of community cohesion. The document included a detailed breakdown of supposed damages my non-cooperation was causing: lost charitable donation opportunities, $25,000; community reputation damage, $15; emergency parking alternative arrangements, $10,000; administrative burden of dispute resolution, $5,000; total threatened lien amount, $55,000. Each notice was more threatening than the last, with increasingly official-looking stamps. Seals and notary marks, all fake of course, but designed to intimidate. They'd even included copies of highlighted HOA bylaws that had clearly been altered to include language about adjacent property obligations. I took all these notices to my lawyer, who was both amused and alarmed by their audacity. "They're committing multiple crimes here," she said, examining the forged notary seals. "This goes beyond HOA overreach into criminal fraud territory." But Victoria wasn't done. The notices kept coming, each more threatening than the last. One morning I found a final warning property seizure notice that claimed Pine Grove Estates had the right to assume temporary control of my property for community emergency purposes. They cited a completely made-up local ordinance that supposedly gave HOAs emergency powers over adjacent properties. The most concerning notice arrived via certified mail. They'd actually paid for official delivery of their fake documents. This one included what appeared to be court documents, complete with a case number and judge's signature. The documents claimed that Pine Grove Estates had been granted an emergency injunction, allowing them to proceed with their parking plan. My lawyer immediately contacted the court and confirmed what we suspected. The documents were completely forged. They'd copied the format of real court documents, but fabricated everything else, including the judge's signature. I carefully documented each notice, photographing them in place before removing them, and creating a detailed log of when each one arrived. My security cameras caught their delivery people in action, proving that these weren't random pranks, but an organized campaign directed by Pine Grove Estates. The final notice, delivered just 24 hours before their planned gala, was the most brazen. It was a notice of immediate property conversion that claimed they had obtained emergency authorization to temporarily nationalize my property for critical community infrastructure purposes. They'd attached a fake government order that looked like it came from the city council. What Victoria didn't realize was that each of these fake notices was digging her legal grave deeper. Every forged signature, every fake government seal, every fraudulent claim added to the growing mountain of evidence. While she thought she was building a paper trail to justify her actions, she was actually creating a documentary record of multiple criminal offenses. I continued collecting and organizing every notice, building a chronological file that would soon become crucial evidence. But I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Victoria interpreted my silence as submission, thinking her intimidation campaign was working. She had no idea that I was deliberately letting her dig herself deeper, documenting every false claim and forged document for what was about to become a legendary legal showdown. The day before the gala, Victoria arrived at my door with what she called her executive committee, a group of 4 stern-looking board members in business attire. The timing wasn't coincidental. They'd waited until early evening when neighbors would be returning from work to witness this official confrontation. "As executive director of Pine Grove Estates," Victoria announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm here with the board to address your continued non-compliance." She was clutching a leather portfolio stuffed with papers, trying to project an air of authority. Standing beside her was Richard Maxwell, their legal counsel, in an expensive suit that screamed corporate lawyer. Behind him were Margaret Winters, their treasurer, furiously tapping on an iPad, and the Thompson twins, no relation to Victoria, both real estate developers who'd recently joined the board. I invited them inside, mostly to avoid giving them the public spectacle they clearly wanted. Victoria looked disappointed, but followed me into my home office, where I had my own documentation ready. "We've reviewed all the notices sent to you," Richard began, pulling out a stack of their forged documents. "Your continued silence constitutes acceptance of our terms under Section 7.3 of the—" I cut him off. "Before you continue, I should mention that this conversation is being recorded. I pointed to the clearly visible security camera in my office. Please, proceed with that in mind. Victoria's confidence wavered slightly, but she pressed on. We have here, she said, spreading out documents on my desk, signed affidavits from multiple community members confirming your verbal agreement to our parking arrangement. Those would be perjury, I replied calmly. I have video evidence of every interaction I've had with Pine Grove Estates representatives. Margaret spoke up. Our financial analysis shows you'll benefit substantially from these improvements. We've invested over $50,000 in your property already. You mean you've caused $50,000 in damage to my property, I corrected. Without permission or permits. The permits are right here, Victoria snapped, slapping down the fake city documents, along with the court order authorizing our emergency measures. I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. Interesting. I just got off a Zoom call with Judge Harrison, the real one, not whoever's signature you forged here. Would you like to see what he had to say about this court order? The Thompson twins exchanged nervous glances. Richard started gathering up the documents, but I stopped him. Those are evidence now. Touch them and it's tampering. Victoria's facade finally cracked. Look, she hissed, this gala is happening tomorrow. We have over 200 guests confirmed, including the mayor and 3 city council members. We've already collected parking fees through our online system. You will not ruin this. I won't have to, I replied. You've done that yourself. Every forged document, every fake permit, every fraudulent notice, they're all documented. The real Judge Harrison is very interested in how his signature ended up on your papers. Are you threatening us? Richard asked, trying to sound authoritative but looking increasingly uncomfortable. No, I'm informing you of reality. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to remove everything from my property and begin restoration work. After that, I'm delivering these documents to the district attorney's office. Victoria stood up so quickly she knocked over her chair. This gala will happen. If you think some tech industry nobody can stop Pine Grove Estates, you're about to learn a hard lesson in community politics. As they filed out, I called after them, check your emails. My lawyer just sent over documentation of every criminal statute you violated. Consider it a preview of tomorrow. Through my security cameras, I watched them huddle in Victoria's driveway for over an hour, gesturing angrily and making phone calls. They thought they were dealing with a pushover who would crumble under official-looking documents and stern talks. Instead, they just discovered they were in way over their heads, but they were too committed to their scheme to back down now. Little did they know I had already set up everything for tomorrow. Their precious gala was about to become a very expensive lesson in property rights and due process. The morning of the gala, I executed my carefully planned preparations. First, I called my lawyer to confirm our strategy. She had already filed an emergency injunction with the court, timed perfectly for Monday morning, but we both knew Victoria would proceed with her plans regardless. I'd hired a professional security team, 4 ex-military guys from Elite Guardian Services, who arrived at 7 a.m. to set up a comprehensive surveillance operation. They installed additional high-definition cameras with night vision capabilities at strategic points around my property, ensuring every angle was covered. Each camera fed directly to a secure cloud server, creating time-stamped evidence of everything that would unfold. My landscaping specialist, Dr. Rodriguez from the Botanical Gardens, arrived shortly after to document the current state of damage. He methodically photographed and catalogued every injured plant, damaged irrigation line, and compacted soil area. His professional assessment would be crucial for the inevitable legal proceedings. These Japanese maples, he said, shaking his head. The root damage from their gravel and platforms. We're looking at tens of thousands in rehabilitation costs if they survive at all. I had also arranged for a civil engineer, Mrs. Chang, to assess the structural impact of their unauthorized modifications. She documented numerous violations of building codes and safety regulations in their makeshift parking setup. These temporary lighting poles they installed, she pointed out. They didn't check for underground utilities. They could have easily hit a gas line. But the most important preparation involved coordinating with multiple towing companies. I contracted with 3 different services to ensure enough capacity for what I anticipated. Each company verified my property ownership and documented the illegal parking situation. They positioned their trucks strategically in neighboring areas, ready to respond on my signal. I installed large, professional no-parking private property. Violators will be towed at owner's expense. Signs at every possible entry point to my property. Each sign included the relevant municipal codes and towing company information, making them fully compliant with local laws. I also set up multiple security cameras specifically focused on each sign to prove they were clearly visible. My lawyer had helped me prepare official notices for every vehicle that might park on my property. Each notice detailed confirmation this was private property, evidence of unauthorized parking, warning of immediate towing, documentation of attempted illegal HOA jurisdiction, property owner contact information, relevant legal statutes being violated. I printed hundreds of these notices, ready to place on any vehicle that dared park on my property. By noon, I had established a command center in my home office. Multiple monitors displayed feeds from all security cameras, and I had direct lines to the police department's non-emergency number, all 3 towing companies, my lawyer's cell phone, the security team's commander, the city's code enforcement office, local news tip lines. I'd also set up a dedicated email address to document all communications and had a notary on standby to certify any relevant documents or incidents. The security team conducted regular perimeter checks, noting any suspicious activity. They observed Victoria and her committee members driving by multiple times, clearly monitoring our preparations. Each drive-by was recorded and logged. Around 2 p.m., I received an interesting call from Mr. Chen. Victoria had apparently called an emergency pre-gala meeting at the clubhouse. She was still insisting the parking plan would proceed, telling residents she had handled the legal issues. My security team's body cameras caught her giving instructions to her valet parking staff, pointing toward my property while waving what appeared to be more fake permits. By 4 p.m., everything was in place. The security team had established a clear perimeter. All cameras were recording, and the towing companies were on high alert. I'd even arranged for a court reporter to be present, documenting everything that would happen. As the afternoon sun began to set, I watched through my security feeds as Victoria's team began setting up for their gala. They were directing their valet parking staff to take positions, including several who were stationed near my property's entrance. The stage was set for what would become one of the most expensive lessons in property rights that Pine Grove Estates had ever received. The gala's initial chaos began unfolding around 5 p.m., just as guests started arriving. Through my security feeds, I watched Victoria station her valet parking team at strategic points, including 3 valets specifically positioned to direct cars onto my property. She'd equipped them with official-looking vests branded with Pine Grove Estates premium parking services. I observed her giving them specific instructions, pointing repeatedly at my property while showing them some kind of laminated map. My directional microphones picked up fragments of her briefing. Premium spaces here, VIP section near the trees. Ignore any signs, we have full authorization. The first wave of guests arrived precisely at 5:15 p.m. Victoria had orchestrated a sophisticated operation. Luxury cars pulled up to the clubhouse entrance, where valets greeted them with pre-printed parking tickets and champagne flutes. As the designated HOA parking areas filled up, her team began executing their plan. "I'm sorry, sir. I heard one valet say to a guest in a Mercedes. "The main lot is full, but we have premium VIP parking in our exclusive section." He gestured toward my property, where they'd set up elegant rope barriers and potted plants to create what looked like an official entrance. Through my cameras, I watched in disbelief as they'd actually created different tiers of parking on my property. The area near my Japanese maples was designated Platinum VIP parking. My former meditation garden became Executive Premium parking. The outer areas were labeled Priority Guest parking. Victoria had stationed herself at the clubhouse entrance, greeting guests while periodically checking her tablet, presumably monitoring their parking operation. She'd occasionally direct her staff through a walkie-talkie, coordinating the flow of vehicles onto my property with disturbing efficiency. At 5:45 p.m., I witnessed her personally escorting the mayor's car toward my driveway. "We've reserved a special spot for you, Mayor Collins," she said loudly enough for my microphones to catch. "Our exclusive Platinum section offers direct access to the gala entrance." The security team's body cams captured Victoria's valets, becoming increasingly bold. They began removing my "no parking" signs, placing them in their golf cart with comments like, "These must have been put up by mistake," and "the HOA approved all parking areas." By 6 p.m., they had transformed my entire front yard into what looked like a high-end parking facility. They'd even set up a mobile payment station near my mailbox, complete with a card reader and receipt printer. Guests were being charged premium parking fees, ranging from $50 to $150, depending on the tier of parking space. I watched through the feeds as Victoria's team directed car after car onto my property. A judge's BMW in my former rose garden, a city council member's Lexus next to my koi pond, the Chamber of Commerce president's Tesla blocking my garage. The most infuriating moment came when Victoria personally directed her assistant to park across my driveway entrance, effectively blocking any possible exit for the vehicles already parked there. "Perfect," I heard her say through the microphone. "Now nobody can interfere with our parking arrangement." At 6:30 p.m., my security team reported that Victoria had posted guards at strategic points around my property. These weren't professional security personnel, just HOA volunteers wearing yellow vests and carrying clipboards, but they were actively preventing anyone from approaching the parked cars or reading my remaining warning signs. By 7 p.m., my property had been completely taken over. Over 45 vehicles were parked on my yard, each one carefully documented by my security cameras. Victoria's team had created a valet station using my front porch, complete with a key storage system and computerized tracking. I continued monitoring and recording everything, watching as Victoria strutted around like she'd pulled off the perfect plan. She had no idea that in less than an hour her entire scheme would collapse spectacularly, and her precious gala would become the talk of the town for all the wrong reasons. At exactly 7:15 p.m., with all the vehicles in place and Victoria's gala in full swing, I executed my final warning phase. I walked outside with my security team and my megaphone, positioning myself where both my cameras and Victoria's parking attendants could clearly see me. "Attention all guests," I announced, my voice echoing across the property. "This is an important announcement regarding your vehicles. I am the legal owner of this property. It is not part of Pine Grove Estates, and no one has permission to park here. Every vehicle on this property is illegally parked and will be towed at the owner's expense within the next 15 minutes. Victoria came rushing out of the clubhouse, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Don't listen to him!" she shouted to the few guests who had wandered outside. "We have full authorization for premium parking services." I continued calmly, making sure my security team's cameras captured everything. Pine Grove Estates has no authority over this property. They are charging you to park illegally on private property. I have documented proof that their permits and authorizations are forged. The police have been notified and towing will begin promptly at 7:30 p.m. That got people's attention. Several guests came out onto the clubhouse balcony looking concerned. I pressed on. If you are parked in what they called the Platinum VIP section near the Japanese maple trees, your car is on private property. If you're in the Executive Premium section by the former garden, your car is on private property. If you're in any spot where you paid for priority guest parking, you are on private property. Victoria tried to drown me out by having her DJ increase the music volume, but I had anticipated this. My security team had positioned portable speakers around the property perimeter. I switched to those. The towing companies will arrive at 7:30 p.m. sharp. Current towing fees are $275 per vehicle plus $50 per day storage. All fees must be paid in cash or credit card to retrieve your vehicle. He's just trying to ruin our charity event, Victoria screamed, but her voice cracked with panic. Everyone, stay inside. We have permits. I held up a thick folder. I have here documented proof that every permit they showed you is forged. I have video evidence of them removing legal no parking signs. I have recordings of them charging you to park on private property without authorization. The police are already aware of this situation. Several guests began moving toward their cars, but Victoria's parking attendants tried blocking their path. Please return to the gala, they insisted. This is just a misunderstanding. That's when I played my trump card. Attention Mayor Collins, Judge Peterson, and Council Member Barnes. Your vehicles are currently parked illegally on private property. I have photographic evidence of Victoria Thompson personally directing. Your car's here while knowing she had no legal authority to do so. I've already forwarded this evidence to the district attorney's office. That got their attention. The mayor appeared at the clubhouse door, looking extremely displeased. Several other prominent guests began demanding their cars be returned immediately. You have exactly 15 minutes to remove your vehicles before towing begins, I announced. I suggest you also demand refunds of any parking fees you were charged, as collecting money for unauthorized parking on private property constitutes fraud. Victoria made one last desperate attempt. We'll sue you for disrupting a charitable event. You're ruining everything. I turned up the volume. This property is under 24-hour video surveillance. I have documented every illegal action taken by Pine Grove Estates. The towing companies will arrive in 14 minutes. This is your final warning. The scene was descending into chaos. Guests were demanding their cars. Victoria was having a meltdown, and her carefully orchestrated parking scheme was unraveling by the second. But she still didn't back down, apparently believing I was bluffing about the towing companies. She was about to learn a very expensive lesson about calling bluffs. At precisely 7:30 p.m., 3 large tow trucks turned onto my street in perfect synchronization. Each truck was equipped with state-of-the-art wheel lift systems and support equipment, capable of removing vehicles quickly and safely. The companies I'd chosen were the most reputable in the area, and they came prepared for a major operation. Victoria's face went through an impressive range of emotions as the trucks pulled up. Disbelief, anger, panic, and finally, desperate rage. She ran towards the first truck, her designer heels sinking into the gravel she'd had spread over my lawn. "You can't do this," she screamed, attempting to block the truck's path. "We have permits. These are VIP guests." The lead tow truck operator, Mike, stepped out with his clipboard. "Ma'am, we have verified documentation that this is private property, and we have proper authorization from the owner to remove all illegally parked vehicles." Inside the clubhouse, word had spread quickly. Guests were rushing out in evening wear, many still clutching champagne glasses. The mayor emerged looking particularly furious, his bow tie askew as he shouted into his phone. The tow operators moved. With practiced efficiency, first truck headed for the Platinum VIP section. Second truck positioned near the executive premium area. Third truck began working on the overflow parking. Victoria made her biggest mistake when she attempted to physically prevent them from hooking up the first car. Ironically, her own Mercedes she'd parked in the ultra-premium spot next to my Japanese maples. "This is my parking system," she shrieked, trying to climb onto the tow truck's lift. "I am the executive director of Pine Grove Estates." My security team's cameras captured everything as Mike calmly replied, "Ma'am, Pine Grove Estates has no authority here. Please step away from the equipment before you hurt yourself." That's when she completely lost it. Victoria grabbed her designer purse and began swinging it at the tow operators, all while screaming about community spirit and charitable donations. The security team had to physically restrain her to prevent her from getting injured by the equipment. The scene devolved into complete chaos, guests rushing to move their cars, Victoria's parking attendants frantically trying to maintain order, HOA board members attempting to show their fake permits to the tow operators, the mayor demanding his car be released first. The tow operators, however, maintained strict professional protocol. Each vehicle was photographed, documented, and properly secured before removal. They'd brought their own security teams, who established a perimeter around their operations. Victoria made one last, desperate attempt to stop the towing. She jumped into her Mercedes just as it was being lifted, refusing to exit the vehicle. "If you want to tow it, you'll have to tow me too," she declared. Mike simply shrugged. "Ma'am, that's your choice. But the impound lot is 15 miles away, and we don't provide return transportation." It took about 30 seconds of being suspended at a 45-degree angle before Victoria finally scrambled out of her car, mascara streaking down her face as she watched her Mercedes being towed away. The real drama peaked when the police arrived, not called by Victoria as she had threatened so many times, but responding to complaints about her assault on the tow truck operators. The officers quickly assessed the situation, verified my property documentation, confirmed the towing was legal, took statements about Victoria's physical altercation with the operators. By 8:15 p.m., the scene resembled a parking lot exodus during a natural disaster. Cars were being moved in a panic, guests were demanding refunds for their parking fees, and Victoria's carefully planned valet system had completely collapsed. The cherry on top? Local news vans began arriving, drawn by tips from guests about the chaos. Victoria's evening of excellence was about to become tomorrow's headline, but not for the reasons she'd hoped. The arrival of the police escalated the situation to a whole new level of chaos. 2 patrol cars pulled up with their lights flashing, followed by a police supervisor in an unmarked vehicle. The supervisor, Sergeant Rodriguez, had already been briefed about the situation from my earlier communications with the department. "Police, everyone step back from the tow trucks," Sergeant Rodriguez commanded, quickly establishing control of the scene. Victoria immediately rushed toward him, her designer dress now stained with grass and dirt from her earlier confrontation. "Finally! Officers, I want this man arrested," she demanded, pointing at me. "He's disrupting a charitable event and has stolen our parking permits. We have proper authorization for all of this." Sergeant Rodriguez remained professionally neutral. "Ma'am, please provide those permits." Victoria snapped her fingers at Richard, her lawyer, who nervously approached with their folder of documents. The sergeant took one look at their fake permits and immediately spotted the discrepancies. The permit numbers didn't match city records. The authorization signatures were clearly forged. The dates were inconsistent with city office hours. "Ma'am, these permits appear to be fraudulent," Sergeant Rodriguez stated. "Do you realize that forging municipal documents is a criminal offense?" Victoria's face went pale. "No, there must be some mistake. We filed everything properly. Call Judge Harrison. He approved our emergency authorization." "I just got off the phone with Judge Harrison," the sergeant replied. "He's very interested in how his signature appeared on documents he never signed." The mayor, who had been watching from the sidelines, suddenly seemed very eager to distance himself from the situation. I was assured by the HOA board that all proper permits were in place, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, before quickly retrieving his car and departing. The police methodically documented everything. Photographed the fake permits. Recorded statements from tow truck operators about Victoria's assault, interviewed guests who had been charged for illegal parking, documented the damage to my property. Victoria's composure completely crumbled when Sergeant Rodriguez began reading her rights. "Wait, you're arresting me? But I'm the victim here. This man," she pointed at me again, "is the one ruining our charity event." "Ma'am, based on the evidence and witness statements you're being detained for, assault on the tow truck operators, presenting fraudulent government documents, operating an illegal parking scheme, criminal trespassing, vandalism of private property." As the officers began, leading Victoria toward a patrol car, she made one final desperate attempt to maintain control. "This is all a misunderstanding. I am the executive director of Pine Grove Estates. You can't arrest me. I have connections." The remaining guests watched in shocked silence as Victoria was placed in the back of a patrol car, still yelling about community spirit and property rights. Her makeup was completely ruined, her expensive dress was dirty, and her carefully crafted image of authority had completely unraveled. The police supervisor turned to me. "Sir, would you like to press charges for the property damage and fraudulent documents?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "My lawyer has prepared a complete file of evidence, including security footage of every illegal action taken by Ms. Thompson and the HOA board." The remaining board members, who had been trying to blend into the background, suddenly found themselves being interviewed by police as potential co-conspirators in the fraud scheme. The Thompson twins were particularly nervous when officers began asking about their role in creating and distributing the fake permits. As Victoria's patrol car pulled away, she could be seen through the window, apparently still yelling though. No one could hear her. The flashing police lights illuminated the scene of her ruined gala, guests departing in chaos, tow trucks still removing vehicles, and her precious premium parking system being dismantled piece by piece. Victoria's immediate reaction following her release from the police station set a new standard for unhinged behavior. At 3 a.m., my security cameras caught her dressed in black, methodically stuffing hundreds of envelopes and placing them in mailboxes throughout the neighborhood, including mine. Each envelope contained what she called an emergency community alert, a 15-page manifesto detailing her version of events. The document was a masterpiece of delusion, printed on official-looking Pine Grove Estates letterhead with gold embossing. Urgent notice of community crisis and emergency assessment. Page 1. A dramatic retelling of how I sabotaged their charitable event. Pages 2 to 3. Completely fabricated history of my property's historical HOA obligations. Pages 4 to 6. Fake legal citations about community emergency powers. Pages 7 to 9, manufactured witness statements supporting her parking scheme. Pages 10 to 12, invented financial damages caused by my selfish actions. Pages 13 to 15, new emergency fees being levied against my property. The most outrageous part was the emergency community restitution assessment at the end, claiming I owed Pine Grove Estates $175,000 for lost charitable donations, $50,000, community reputation damage, $45,000, emergency venue reorganization, $30,000, legal defense fund, $25,000, emotional distress compensation, $25,000 CDE. Even included a payment schedule demanding monthly installments of $14,583.33 with a 22% non-compliance penalty interest rate. But Victoria wasn't done. By sunrise, she had created a Save Pine Grove Estates Facebook group filled with false accusations, plastered fake property seizure notice posters all over my fence, left voicemails for every HOA member claiming emergency assessments were needed, emailed local media with a fabricated story about charity funds being stolen. The crown jewel of her meltdown was a 47-minute video she posted on the HOA's private YouTube channel at 4:30 a.m., still wearing her dirty gala dress, mascara smeared. She ranted about how I was part of a deep state HOA conspiracy, my alleged secret plan to destroy community values, a completely imagined connection between me and foreign parking lot cartels. Her theory that I was working with rival HOAs to undermine Pine Grove Estates. She even claimed that my Japanese maple trees were actually disguised 5G towers designed to control property values through electromagnetic manipulation. The video ended with her announcing a new emergency community defense initiative, requiring each HOA household to contribute $5,000 for legal fees to fight the forces of anti-community terrorism. By 6 a.m., she had progressed to posting hourly updates about imaginary legal proceedings, creating fake court documents, claiming victory in non-existent hearings, sending increasingly incoherent emails to HOA members about property sovereignty, demanding emergency board powers to combat the crisis. Her piece de resistance came at 7 a.m. when she attempted to post an official-looking property condemnation notice on my front door. My security cameras caught her measuring my yard with a hot pink tape measure while muttering about hostile landscaping tactics. The notice claimed that my property had been condemned for emergency community purposes under the authority of Pine Grove Estates Resolution 47B, Emergency Powers for Community Preservation. She'd even created a fake government seal using what appeared to be a refrigerator magnet and gold paint. When my lawyer sent someone to collect evidence of her activities, they found Victoria had set up a command center on her front lawn, complete with a card table covered in more fake legal documents, a printer actively producing more notices, several empty coffee cups and energy drink cans, a whiteboard with an elaborate conspiracy flowchart, a stack of emergency HOA defender badges she'd made. Her neighbors reported hearing her practicing impassioned speeches to her garden gnomes about the sacred duty of parking enforcement and the constitutional rights of HOAs to annex adjacent properties. All of this was meticulously documented by my security system and added to the growing file of evidence that would soon make its way to the district attorney's office. My legal team sprang into action first thing Monday morning, armed with an overwhelming amount of evidence. They filed a comprehensive legal response that would make Victoria regret every single action she'd taken over the past few days. The initial filing included a 50-page cease and desist order detailing every violation, security footage from 12 different camera angles, audio recordings of all confrontations and threats, photographs of property damage with expert assessments, copies of every fraudulent document Victoria had created, screenshots of her overnight social media meltdown, testimonies from affected gala guests, documentation of illegal parking fee collection, evidence of forged permits and signatures. My lead attorney, Sarah Chen, had specialized in HOA disputes for 20 years, but even she was impressed by the scope of violations. "In all my years of practice," she said, reviewing the evidence, "I've never seen someone so thoroughly document their own crimes." The legal response targeted multiple angles. Criminal charges. Multiple counts of criminal fraud, forging government documents, operating an illegal parking scheme, vandalism and property damage, criminal trespassing, assault on tow truck operators, harassment and intimidation. civil actions, property damage restoration costs, compensation for landscape destruction, punitive damages for harassment, recovery of illegally collected parking fees, emotional distress damages, legal fee reimbursement, filing of restraining orders. Regulatory complaints, HOA violations report to state authorities, fraud report to the district attorney, business license violations, zoning law infractions, environmental damage assessment, building code violations, insurance fraud investigations. Sarah also filed emergency motions for temporary restraining order against Victoria, preservation of all HOA documents, freezing of HOA accounts pending investigation, protection order for my property, injunction against further harassment. The most devastating filing was a RICO complaint suggesting Victoria's parking scheme was part of a pattern of fraudulent HOA activities. This opened the door for federal investigation of HOA finances, audit of previous charitable events, review of all HOA contracts and permits, investigation of board member conflicts of interest. My legal team also sent preservation notices to Victoria's email providers, social media platforms, cloud storage services, cell phone carriers, security companies, banking institutions, payment processors used for parking fees. They filed complaints with State Attorney General's Office, Department of Real Estate, Local Law Enforcement, City Planning Department, Environmental Protection Agency, Consumer Protection Bureau, professional licensing boards. The thorough documentation proved crucial. Every email, every fake notice, every social media post, every security camera footage was catalogued and submitted as evidence. Victoria's overnight meltdown had provided a goldmine of self-incriminating evidence. Sarah arranged for expert witnesses to assess landscape damage, $157,000 estimated restoration cost, property value impact, environmental damage, structural damage from unauthorized modifications, psychological impact of harassment, professional reputation damage, security system. Upgrade requirements by end of day. Victoria and Pine Grove estates faced 23 separate legal actions, 47 individual charges, 12 regulatory investigations, $2 million in potential damages, criminal prosecution for multiple felonies, potential dissolution of the HOA board. When Victoria received the legal documents, she attempted one final act of defiance, trying to reject the court papers by writing "Return to Sender Sovereign HOA Territory" across them in red marker. This too was documented and added to the evidence file. The stage was now set for what would become one of the most expensive lessons in property rights and HOA overreach in the county's history. The consequences for Pine Grove Estates unfolded rapidly over the next week. After my lawyer's filings hit the court system, the HOA board called an emergency meeting that turned into a 5-hour marathon of accusations, revelations, and finger-pointing. They'd seen inside the clubhouse, according to several attendees who later gave sworn statements, was absolute chaos. Board Treasurer Margaret Winters kicked things off by presenting a devastating financial assessment. Legal defense fund completely depleted, insurance carriers threatening to cancel coverage, property values already dropping. From negative publicity, multiple homeowners withholding HOA dues in protest, charitable donation partners demanding refunds, credit card companies reversing all parking fee charges, emergency funds insufficient for potential damages. Then Richard Maxwell, their legal counsel, delivered the killing blow by announcing his immediate resignation. "I cannot and will not defend actions that constitute criminal fraud," he stated before walking out, leaving behind a detailed memo documenting every illegal action he'd advised against, but Victoria had pursued anyway. The Thompson twins, trying to save themselves, produced emails showing they'd actually warned Victoria about the legal risks. "We explicitly told her the permits were fake," they revealed, throwing her under the bus. She said she had special arrangements with city officials. The real bombshell came when the HOA's insurance provider's representative arrived mid-meeting. She announced that their policy would not cover criminal acts by board members, intentional property damage, fraudulent permit schemes, unauthorized parking operations, personal liability for board members, legal defense for criminal charges. Damages from forged documents. This meant board members could be personally liable for damages. The room erupted into panic as people realized their personal assets might be at risk, but the meeting's defining moment came when the HOA's external auditor presented his preliminary findings. Years of questionable financial transactions, missing documentation for charitable events, unauthorized use of emergency funds, personal expenses charged to HOA accounts, undisclosed conflicts of interest, pattern of permit and zoning violations, irregular handling of violation fees. Victoria's parking scheme had inadvertently exposed years of financial mismanagement and questionable practices. Board members who had blindly approved her proposals now faced potential personal liability. The meeting reached its climax when 3 actions were put to vote. Immediate removal of Victoria from all HOA positions. Formation of an emergency. Management Committee 3. Full cooperation with all investigations. All 3 measures passed unanimously, with Victoria herself conspicuously absent from the meeting. The aftermath was swift. Victoria was officially removed as executive director. All board members were required to surrender documents. External auditors were given full access to records. Security codes and accounts were changed. Property management company threatened contract termination. Several board members resigned on the spot. Insurance premiums tripled effective immediately. The new Emergency Management Committee's first acts were freezing all non-essential spending, cancelling Victoria's HOA credit cards, changing locks on the clubhouse, hiring a forensic accountant, establishing a legal defense fund, creating a crisis communication plan, initiating damage control with local media. But the most significant development came when they discovered Victoria had been running unauthorized parking operations at other HOA events for years, pocketing the fees while claiming they went to charity. This revelation turned many of her remaining supporters against her and sparked additional investigations. The meeting concluded with the sobering realization that Pine Grove Estate's reputation, finances, and future were in serious jeopardy. All because Victoria couldn't accept that my property wasn't her personal parking lot. The impact on the Pine Grove Estate's community was immediate and far-reaching. In the days following Victoria's removal and the emergency meeting, the full scope of the disaster became apparent through a cascade of consequences affecting every resident. The first wave hit the gala attendees who'd had their vehicles towed. These weren't just any residents. They were some of the most influential people in the county. Judge Peterson's car, $275 towing fee plus $150 storage. Mayor Collins' vehicle, $275 plus premium retrieval fee. 3 city council members, combined fees over $1. Udajo, Chamber of Commerce, President, damaged tire during towing. Local news anchor, missed late broadcast due to towing. Hospital board director, missed emergency meeting. Bank executives, multiple vehicles impounded. Real estate developers, 6 luxury cars towed. The total towing and storage fees exceeded $15. Urdaisten, and these powerful individuals demanded immediate reimbursement. Their fury was compounded when they discovered Victoria had charged them premium parking fees for illegal spots. The ripple effect spread through the community. Property Values dropped another 10% in just 1 week. Real estate agents refused to list Pine Grove properties. Mortgage lenders flagged the neighborhood for review. Insurance companies reassessed coverage terms. Local businesses withdrew event sponsorships. Charitable organizations distanced themselves. Media coverage turned increasingly negative, social media filled with embarrassing memes. Neighboring HOAs suspended reciprocal privileges. The financial impact on individual homeowners was severe. Emergency assessment of $5.00 per household. Legal defense fund contribution of $2,500 each. Increased monthly dues to cover insurance hikes. Property tax reassessments due to value decline. Special audit fee assessments of $1,000 per home. Crisis management fund contributions. Required reserve fund replenishment. Legal consultation retainer fees. Many residents faced personal consequences. Business relationships damaged. Professional reputations tarnished. Social connections strained. Club memberships questioned. Bored. Positions at other organizations reviewed. Children teased at school about the HOA scandal. Local vendors requiring prepayment. Credit ratings impacted by assessment liens. The community's social fabric began unraveling. Neighbors stopped speaking to each other. Community events cancelled. Book clubs disbanded. Tennis groups split up. Walking groups dissolved. Bridge nights suspended. Holiday decorating committees resigned. Community garden plots abandoned. The investigation revealed victims extended beyond just gala attendees. Previous event parking scams identified. Multiple charitable organizations defrauded. Years of unauthorized fees collected. Fake permits issued for other events. Vendor kickback schemes exposed. Ghost employee payroll discovered. Inflated maintenance contracts revealed. Personal expenses charged to HOA long-term residents were particularly devastated. Retirement community plans ruined. Home equity lines frozen. Refinancing applications denied. Moving plans complicated. Rental income reduced. Investment values diminished. Legacy properties tainted. Generation transfers complicated. The community amenities suffered immediate impact. Clubhouse rentals cancelled. Pool maintenance delayed. Tennis court resurfacing postponed. Fitness center equipment leases terminated. Landscaping services reduced. Security patrols cut back. Maintenance projects suspended. Capital improvements halted. Even the physical appearance of the community declined. Landscape maintenance reduced. Common areas neglected. Entry features dimmed. Water features turned off. Seasonal plantings cancelled. Street cleaning reduced. Power washing suspended. Holiday decorations cancelled. The psychological impact on residents was profound. Community pride shattered, social status diminished, trust in neighbors broken, sense of security lost, property pride diminished, community spirit crushed, future uncertainty looming, emotional stress mounting assume. Emergency Management Committee faced daily challenges. Constant resident complaints, media inquiry management, legal response coordination, insurance negotiation, vendor relationship repair, staff morale issues, security concerns, documentation. Demands. The reputation damage seemed irreparable. Local media running daily stories, social media groups mocking the HOA, real estate blogs warning buyers. Review sites filled with negative comments, professional organizations distancing themselves, political connections severed, business partnerships cancelled, community awards rescinded as the dust began to settle. It became clear that Pine Grove Estates would never be the same. The once prestigious community had become a cautionary tale about HOA overreach and the dangers of unchecked authority. All because Victoria couldn't accept that my property wasn't part of her domain. After seeing how far Victoria and the HOA board were willing to go, I implemented comprehensive precautionary measures to protect myself and my property. Working with security experts and my legal team, I created multiple layers of protection that would make any future attempts at property invasion impossible. The first layer focused on physical security enhancements. Military-grade security camera system with 24/7 recording. Motion-activated floodlights covering every angle. Infrared night vision cameras with facial recognition. License plate readers at all possible entry points. Vibration sensors along property boundaries. Underground pressure sensors in potential parking areas. Weather-resistant audio recording systems, backup power systems with generator support, real-time alert system, connected to my phone, remote monitoring capabilities from anywhere, cloud storage with triple redundancy, AI-powered anomaly detection, legal documentation systems were strengthened, automated incident logging software, time-stamped video archives, digital evidence preservation protocols, continuous audio recording backups, real-time document scanning system, automated report generation, chain of custody tracking, legal compliance verification, multiple backup storage locations, encrypted, communication channels, digital signature verification, tamper-evident recording systems, physical property protection measures included, reinforced decorative bollards around the perimeter, retractable security barriers at entry points, strategic landscape design to prevent vehicle access, enhanced lighting systems on timers, security-grade fencing disguised as decorative borders, remote-controlled access gates, emergency response protocols, anti-tampering devices on utilities, smart irrigation system monitoring, property line markers with GPS tracking, surveyor-grade boundary documentation. Professional landscaping barriers, I established multiple documentation protocols. Daily property condition photographs. Weekly detailed inspection reports. Monthly professional surveys. Quarterly environmental assessments. Regular drone footage documentation. Systematic landscape inventory updates. Maintenance record documentation. Incident response logging, visitor documentation, system, weather condition monitoring, property modification tracking, regular legal compliance reviews, communication systems were upgraded, direct line to local police department, priority response agreement with towing companies, emergency contact, system with neighbors, real-time alert system to legal team, automated notification protocols, emergency broadcast capabilities, instant communication with security team, direct access to city officials, priority response from utility companies, professional monitoring service connection, automated incident reporting, emergency response coordination, legal preparedness was enhanced, updated property documentation readily available, pre-prepared cease and desist orders, emergency injunction, and templates ready, standing agreements with law enforcement, pre-approved towing authorizations, updated insurance documentation, ready to file legal complaints, evidence preservation protocols, witness statement templates, emergency legal response, plans, professional witness contacts, expert testimony arrangements, environmental monitoring was implemented, soil composition testing, root system protection monitoring, water quality analysis, air quality measurements, noise level monitoring, light pollution tracking, wildlife activity documentation, plant health assessment, erosion monitoring systems, drainage pattern tracking, chemical exposure detection, environmental impact documentation. Professional relationships were established with multiple law enforcement agencies, several towing companies, various security firms, multiple legal teams, professional surveyors, environmental experts, property assessors, insurance adjusters, city officials, code enforcement, media. E-contacts, professional witnesses, regular maintenance protocols included, weekly security system checks, monthly equipment calibration, quarterly system upgrades, regular software updates, battery backup testing, emergency system drills, equipment, maintenance schedules, professional system audits, regular training updates, protocol review sessions, emergency response practice, documentation system updates. The entire system was designed to be fully automated where possible, manually overridable when needed, redundantly backed up, legally compliant, easy to maintain, simple to operate, cost-effective, energy-efficient, weather-resistant, tamper-proof, future-proof, scalable. These measures might seem extreme, but after experiencing Victoria's level of entitlement and the HOA's willingness to break laws, I knew robust protection was necessary. The investment in security and documentation systems was substantial, but far less costly than dealing with another HOA invasion attempt. Plus, the peace of mind was priceless. The system would soon prove its worth when Victoria made one final desperate attempt to reclaim her parking authority over my property. After everything that happened, I started questioning if I had handled the situation correctly. So Reddit, am I the jerk for taking such extreme measures against the HOA and getting so many cars towed from my property? Let me explain why I'm asking and why I'm feeling conflicted about this whole mess. On one hand, I feel completely justified because they illegally took over my private property. Victoria forged official documents and permits. They charged people to park illegally on my land. They damaged my expensive landscaping. They threatened me with fake fines and liens. They ran a smear campaign against me. They ignored multiple clear warnings. They tried to intimidate me with false authority, but some community members have raised concerns. Many innocent people got caught in the crossfire. Several charitable organizations lost funding. The entire neighborhood's property values dropped. Some residents face significant financial hardship. Community relationships have been damaged. Local businesses were negatively impacted. The HOA's reputation may never recover. Some people lost their positions on the board. My lawyer assures me I did everything legally and properly, gave multiple clear warnings, documented everything meticulously, posted proper signage, had all necessary permits, followed all towing regulations, maintained professional behavior, kept detailed records, acted within my rights. Still, I'm hearing various perspectives from different sides. Supportive neighbors say I exposed years of HOA corruption. I stood up to systematic abuse. I protected property rights. I revealed financial fraud. I stopped illegal activities. I prevented future violations. I demanded accountability. I upheld legal principles. Critical residents argue I could have found a compromise. I should have given more warnings. I went too far with towing. I damaged community spirit. I was unnecessarily rigid. I lacked flexibility. I caused widespread harm. I destroyed relationships. Local business owners have mixed feelings. Some appreciate exposing corruption. Others lost valuable connections. Some gained new customers. Others lost regular clients. Some respect standing up to power. Others resent community disruption. Some see it as necessary justice. Others view it as needlessly harsh. My family members are divided. Some fully support my actions. Others think I was too aggressive. Some say I had no choice. Others suggest compromise was possible. Some praise my principles. Others worry about consequences. Some admire my stand. Others fear ongoing repercussions. Professional colleagues have varying opinions. Legal experts approve my documentation. Social workers worry about community impact. Business consultants praise strategy. Community organizers criticize approach. Property managers understand my position. Event planners sympathize with both sides. Security. Experts commend preparation. Public relations pros question methods. Even my close friends are split. Some say I'm a hero. Others call me stubborn. Some celebrate my victory. Others mourn the aftermath. Some praise my courage. Others question my methods. Some defend my rights. Others suggest alternatives. The media coverage has been equally divided. Local news praises exposing corruption. Community papers criticize methods. Business journals analyze impact. Social media debates rage. On TV news covers both sides. Radio shows discuss ethics. Online forums argue endlessly. Editorials offer mixed views. So Reddit, considering all perspectives, was I justified in my actions? Did I go too far with the towing? Should I have tried harder to compromise? Was there a better solution? Did I handle the situation correctly? Could I have prevented more damage? Did I consider all alternatives? Should I have been more flexible? I maintain that I acted within my rights and had no real choice given Victoria's actions. But I'm curious to hear unbiased opinions. What do you think, Reddit? Am I the jerk in this situation? Update. Thank you all for your responses. The overwhelming consensus seems to be that while the situation was unfortunate, I acted appropriately. Given the circumstances, your comments have helped me feel more confident about my decisions and actions. The Reddit community's response was overwhelming, with thousands of comments flooding in. Let me share some of the most insightful reactions that really captured the essence of this situation. Top comment, 15.7K upvotes. Absolutely NTA, not the a-hole. This HOA president forged legal documents, vandalized your property, ran an illegal parking scheme, and tried to extort money from you. Then she had the audacity to play victim when caught. You didn't just protect your property, you exposed years of corruption that needed to come to light. The fact that you documented everything and gave multiple warnings shows you handled this perfectly. Another highly upvoted response, 12.3K upvotes. Property law expert here. Your handling of this situation was textbook perfect. You documented everything meticulously, gave clear warnings, posted proper signage, followed all legal procedures, had proper authorization, maintained professional behavior, protected your rights legally. This is exactly how property disputes should be handled. HOA board members' perspective, 9.8K upvotes. I serve on an HOA board, and Victoria's actions are absolutely insane. We would never dream of forging government documents, charging for parking on non-HOA property, making false legal claims, destroying private property, threatening homeowners illegally. You didn't ruin the community. Victoria did with her illegal actions. A different view, 8.5K upvotes. While you're definitely NTA, let's acknowledge the real victims here. The residents who trusted their HOA leadership. They're now facing increased dues and assessments, dropped property values, legal defense. Costs, insurance premium hikes, community reputation damage. Victoria betrayed everyone's trust, not just yours. Former HOA president's input, 7.2K upvotes. Speaking as someone who led an HOA for 10 years, Victoria's actions were inexcusable. She abused her position, violated basic HOA principles, ignored legal boundaries, risked everyone's investments, destroyed community trust. You didn't cause this mess, you just exposed it. Legal perspective, 6.9K upvotes. Lawyer here. The HOA committed multiple crimes. Document forgery, criminal fraud, illegal parking operation, property damage, criminal trespassing. You had every right to protect yourself and your property. Community organizers' view, 6.1K upvotes. While the situation is unfortunate, blame lies entirely with Victoria. She created fake documents, ran illegal schemes, ignored warnings, damaged property, threatened illegally. The community damage is on her, not you. Property Manager's Insight, 5.8K. Upvotes, 20-year property manager here. You handled this perfectly by documenting everything, following legal procedures, giving clear warnings, maintaining professionalism, protecting your rights. This is a masterclass in handling HOA overreach. Counterpoint, 4.2K upvotes. While NTA, consider the collateral damage. Innocent neighbors affected. Community relationships strained, property values dropped, charitable events impacted, but this is Victoria's fault, not yours. Towing company perspective, 3.9K upvotes. I work in towing. You did everything right, posted clear warnings, had proper documentation, followed all regulations, gave multiple chances, maintained professionalism. This is exactly how it should be done. The overall consensus was clear, with over 95% of comments supporting my actions. The common themes in the responses were praise for thorough documentation, clear communication, professional behavior, legal compliance, patient approach. Multiple warnings, proper procedures, standing up to abuse criticism of Victoria for document forgery, illegal schemes, property damage, false claims, harassment, threats, lies, fraud. The few dissenting opinions mainly focused on community impact, alternative solutions, compromise possibilities, diplomatic approaches, relationship, damage, property values, social costs, long-term effects. However, even these critics generally agreed that Victoria was primarily at fault. Her actions were illegal. The HOA overstepped. I had the right to act. Documentation was crucial. Warnings were given. Process was followed. Response was justified. Reddit community's overwhelming support helped confirm that while the situation was unfortunate, the responsibility for all negative consequences lay squarely with Victoria and her illegal actions. Here's a significant update on what happened after everything settled down. Pine Grove Estates underwent a complete transformation under new leadership, with changes that would make sure nothing like this could ever happen again. The new HOA president, Dr. James Anderson, a retired judge with 30 years of legal experience, implemented sweeping reforms, immediate policy changes, complete revision of HOA bylaws, new transparency requirements, strict financial controls, professional management company hired, independent audit committee established, ethics guidelines implemented, term limits for board members, mandatory legal review of all decisions, professional property management, regular financial audits, clear violation procedures, appeals process established, administrative reforms, new documentation systems, professional record keeping, regular financial reports, open board meetings, recorded proceedings, public comment periods, online access to documents, clear communication channels, professional staff training, regular compliance reviews, technology upgrades, modernized operations, financial controls, two-signature requirement on all checks, monthly financial reviews, independent auditor oversight, transparent budgeting process, professional accounting service, regular financial reports, clear spending limits, emergency fund controls, investment guidelines, reserve fund management, expense documentation, regular assessments review community, relations, monthly town halls, regular newsletters, open communication channels, community feedback sessions, resident advisory committees, social event planning, dispute resolution process, neighborhood outreach, regular updates, online portal, mobile app, community surveys, legal compliance, professional legal counsel retained, regular legal reviews, permit verification process, documentation requirements, clear enforcement procedures, rights education programs, regular training sessions, compliance audits, policy reviews, legal updates, risk management insurance reviews, property management, professional service contracted, regular maintenance schedules, clear contractor guidelines, quality control measures, response time requirements, emergency procedures, service level agreements, vendor verification, performance metrics, regular inspections, documentation systems, resident feedback. The most significant changes came in how they handle adjacent properties. Boundary respect, clear property line documentation, professional surveys maintained, regular boundary reviews, clear jurisdiction limits, neighbor relations policy, communication protocols, dispute resolution procedures, buffer zone guidelines, access agreements, shared maintenance plans, emergency protocols, cooperation frameworks. Dr. Anderson personally reached out to me to formally apologize for past actions, establish clear boundaries, create communication channels, develop emergency protocols, share maintenance schedules, coordinate landscaping plan, snow removal, discuss security, address concerns, build trust, foster cooperation, maintain relationships. The new board also reimbursed all towing victims, restored damaged properties, implemented new parking plans, created event guidelines, established clear protocols, improved communication, built community trust, enhanced transparency, strengthened oversight, protected rights, ensured compliance, prevented overreach. The community response was positive. Property values stabilized. Resident satisfaction improved. Community spirit returned. Trust was rebuilt. Relations improved. Conflicts decreased. Participation increased. Communication enhanced. Cooperation grew. Standards raised. Progress made. Peace restored. Dr. Anderson's leadership style emphasized professional management, clear communication, legal compliance, resident involvement, transparent operations, fair enforcement, regular updates, open meetings, quick response, clear rules, fair play, trust. Building, the transformation included modern management systems, professional staff training, regular legal reviews, clear documentation, open communication, fair procedures, regular audits, clear policies, good practices, better service, high standards, strong ethics. These changes have created stable property values, happy residents, strong community, clear rules, fair treatment, good relations, trust, peace, progress, growth, success. Harmony. Pine Grove Estates has become a model for HOA reform, showing how proper management and clear boundaries can create a thriving community while respecting property rights. The dark days of Victoria's reign are now just a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked HOA power. Thanks for watching this absolutely wild story about HOA parking drama. The way this HOA president completely lost it when her illegal parking scheme backfired was truly something else. If you thought this was satisfying, just wait until you see what I've got coming up next. I've got another incredible story queued up about someone who turned the tables on their entitled neighbor in the most epic way. This one involves a stolen garden that backfired spectacularly, security cameras catching everything. The most satisfying revenge served ice cold, a neighborhood civil war and karmic justice that will make you cheer. Here's a little teaser to hook you. My neighbor decided my vegetable garden belonged to her just because she could see it from her window. She started harvesting my crops while I was at work, claiming they were community property. But when she tried selling my tomatoes at her farm stand, she learned a very expensive lesson about property rights. Before we dive into that story, though, I want to thank all of you who've supported this channel. Your comments, likes, and shares help these stories reach more people who might be dealing with similar situations. Remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed this story. Subscribe for more wild HOA and neighbor drama. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any uploads. Share your own HOA horror stories in the comments. Let me know what kind of stories you want to see next. Also, many of you have been asking about merchandise and ways to support the channel. I'm excited to announce that we now have t-shirts with popular quotes from our stories, coffee mugs with anti-HOA messages, stickers featuring our channel mascot, special member perks for channel supporters, early access to upcoming stories. Links to everything are in the description below. Every purchase helps keep this channel going and lets me bring you more of these incredible stories of justice served. And for those wondering, yes, I thoroughly verify all stories before sharing them. I work with submitters to ensure accuracy and maintain proper documentation. While some details may be changed to protect privacy, the core events are always true. Coming up next week, more HOA drama, entitled Neighbor Stories, property line disputes, parking revenge tales, and much more. So stay tuned. Keep those stories coming, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is serving it legally and professionally. 2 months after everything seemed to settle down, Victoria made one final desperate attempt that showed just how unhinged she'd truly become. This last-ditch effort would cement her place in HOA infamy and lead to consequences even I couldn't have predicted. It started on a quiet Sunday morning when my security system alerted me to unusual activity. Victoria had shown up at 4 a.m. wearing what appeared to be a homemade official county inspector uniform, complete with a badly photoshopped ID badge. She wasn't alone. She'd brought a rented excavator and a crew of very confused contractors. The security footage showed her confidently approaching the workers with a folder full of what she claimed were emergency excavation permits. Her plan, as revealed by the audio recordings, was absolutely bizarre. "We need to prove this property was historically part of Pine Grove Estates," she was telling the contractors. "The original HOA boundary markers are buried under his yard. Once we find them, we can prove this was all a huge mistake." Her documentation included poorly forged emergency work orders, fake historical property surveys, photoshopped aerial photographs, made-up archaeological permits, counterfeit county authorizations, fabricated historical records, altered property, maps, fake utility clearances. The contractors, already suspicious of the early hour and strange requests, became even more concerned when Victoria started directing them to dig up my Japanese maple trees, excavate my koi pond, remove sections of my driveway, search for historical markers, unearth supposed original survey stakes, look for buried HOA documentation, expose fictional boundary monuments, investigate historical property lines. When one worker questioned the legitimacy of her papers, Victoria launched into an unhinged rant about secret HOA conspiracies, hidden property documents, underground boundary markers, historical property rights, concealed survey evidence, ancient HOA territories, buried legal proof, constitutional HOA authority. The security footage caught her increasingly erratic behavior, marking dig sites with pink spray paint, taking measurements with a toy surveying tool, consulting a historical map she'd clearly drawn herself, directing workers to imaginary locations, ranting about property line conspiracies, making wild claims about buried evidence, taking soil samples in sandwich bags, photographing random spots in my yard. The contractors, growing more uncomfortable by the minute, started making discreet phone calls. One called their boss, another contacted the rental company, a third reached out to county offices, someone alerted the police, one worker called code enforcement. Another contacted utility services. Someone notified their union. The foreman called his lawyer within an hour. Multiple authorities arrived. Local police department, county code enforcement, utility company inspectors, equipment rental representatives, building department officials, real excavation inspectors, property boundary surveyors. Mental health crisis team Victoria's reaction to their arrival was surreal. Tried eating her fake permits, attempted to hide in the excavator, claimed she had sovereign HOA authority, accused everyone of being in on the conspiracy, demanded to speak to the real police, insisted she had constitutional HOA rights, called for an emergency HOA assembly, attempted to citizens arrest a police officer. The situation finally ended when police took her into custody. Equipment was returned, damage was documented, workers gave statements, evidence was collected, reports were filed, charges were pressed, treatment was ordered. The aftermath led to criminal charges for attempted vandalism, additional fraud charges, property damage citations, trespassing charges, forged document charges, mental health evaluation, restraining orders, legal consequences. This final incident resulted in mandatory psychiatric evaluation, court-ordered treatment, criminal prosecution, civil penalties, legal fees, property damages, equipment charges, complete professional ruin. The contractors later shared that Victoria had promised them huge bonuses, claimed emergency authorization, insisted on complete secrecy, demanded immediate action, offered cash payments, required early morning work, promised legal protection, guaranteed government approval. The long-term fallout from Victoria's final desperate act rippled far beyond our local community, leading to changes that would affect HOAs across the entire state. Her excavator incident became known as the HOA Waterloo in legal circles and sparked a complete overhaul of HOA regulations. The immediate legal consequences were severe. 5 years probation for Victoria, mandatory psychiatric treatment, 250s, udruzo in criminal fines, civil damages exceeding $500,000, lifetime ban from HOA leadership, professional license revocation, community service requirement, property lines for damages, but the broader impact led to statewide reforms. New HOA oversight, regulations, mandatory board member training, financial accountability laws, Property Boundary Protection Acts, required insurance coverage, leadership qualification standards, document verification requirements, third-party auditing mandates. State legislature passed the HOA Reform Act, which required criminal background checks for board members, professional property management, independent financial audits, clear boundary documentation, regular legal reviews, member voting protection, transparent operations, anti-harassment policies. Professional HOA management companies now must maintain proper licensing, carry extensive insurance, undergo regular audits, provide staff training, document all actions, follow strict protocols, maintain records, report violations. Property boundary disputes now require professional surveys, legal documentation, clear marking, regular reviews, official records, permit verification, boundary respect, dispute resolution. Financial controls were strengthened with independent auditing, dual signatures, regular reviews, clear records, member access, spending limits, budget oversight, fraud prevention. The case became required study material for law schools, property managers, HOA boards, real estate agents, insurance providers, community managers, legal practitioners, government officials. Insurance companies developed new policies covering board member actions, property disputes, legal challenges, member conflicts, boundary issues, documentation problems, leadership failures, operational risks. Real estate practices change to include clear boundary documentation, HOA jurisdiction verification, property rights education, dispute history disclosure, insurance requirement, review, leadership background checks, operational transparency, member protection measures. The media coverage led to documentary features, legal analysis shows, training videos, educational programs, case studies, news specials, reform discussions. Policy debates. Professional organizations developed new certification programs, training requirements, ethics guidelines, best practices, operating standards, leadership criteria, documentation protocols, dispute procedures. Victoria herself eventually moved to another state, wrote a public apology, underwent treatment, made restitution, changed careers, avoided publicity, learned lessons, found peace. The Pine Grove Estates community rebuilt its reputation, strengthened governance, improved operations, protected rights, restored trust, enhanced value. United members moved forward. As for me, I maintained my property, strengthened security, protected boundaries, documented everything, built relationships, shared experiences, helped others, moved forward. The lasting lessons included property rights matter, documentation is crucial, boundaries are important, professional management helps, clear communication works, legal compliance is essential, community matters, rights require protection. This case now serves as a cautionary tale, a learning tool, a legal reference, a training example, a policy guide, a reform catalyst, a behavioral study, a success story. Experience taught everyone that rights must be respected, rules matter, documentation helps, professionalism counts, communication works, leadership matters, community counts, peace prevails today. This story continues to educate others, prevent problems, guide policy, improve operations, protect rights, build community, create change, inspire reform. And that's the complete story of how one HOA president's parking scheme led to changes that improved community living for everyone. Remember to like, subscribe, and share your own HOA stories in the comments below. See you in the next video. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.